Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. The pace of people entering the room has slowed down a little bit. Welcome to the 2022 Nebraska Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools. I don't know exactly what we'll call this meeting right now. We'll call the rollout. Just know that we're trying to put as much information together for you as we can and get it out as quickly as we can. So bear with us just a little bit on this whole process. Before we begin, we are recording this and we will post it on the NDE ARP EANS webpage. We will also put this slide deck up for what that's worth as we go through this process. There will be some pauses throughout the presentation where you can unmute and ask questions. And you can also utilize the chat. There are some people from FACT who are monitoring the chat box for questions. And so we will try to get to those as we need to as well. I thought about trying to start this with a joke, but NDE already has a guy who's bad with jokes who starts meetings, so I don't want to be the second one of those. A little bit about what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk about the programs that are available, and really what we're going to talk about today is, if you've gotten my emails, there are 3 different programs that are going to impact your funding, and we're going to talk a little bit about all 3 of those, and they are all going to be on the same application, and so it hopefully that decreases the amount of time you have to put into this. Also, we're going to talk about the timeline, the application itself, the allowable uses, the federally required control of the funds and inventory. FACTS is going to do a little bit of presentation to us too, and we'll talk about the supports that are available. Okay, we'll start this over again. How long ago did I mute myself?
I heard that FACTS was going to be doing a presentation.
All right, so we'll skip. We'll start with this spot in. I don't know anything I said up to this, but it was really earth shaking. I'll probably repeat myself several times anyway.
If you were to want to turn on here, where would I go?
So we have 3 pots of money. One of them is the one that you're all are most interested in anticipating. It's the ARP EANS fund. We have $17 million worth of assistance to go to non-public schools. It's a second round of EANS. It has all of the same allowable uses as EANS 1, except that we have no ability to do any reimbursements under that program. And the other thing majorly that was changed between this one and EANS 1 is the fact that we now have the significant poverty threshold. And really that came from the feds, and that was their first ruling that said we had to have 40% poverty to serve a school.
I just got to listen to it. Yeah. Well, no, I have a link. Yeah.
If you are not muted, please mute yourself. Don't mute me, just mute yourself. Okay, the second pot of money that we're going to talk about today is the Gear 2 supplemental assistance. And that money comes from the governor. It is gear money, and so it's run under a little bit different set of rules than the ARP EANS funds. But it will follow some of the same rules and some rules that are different. There are really 2 sets of pot of money within the Year 2 supplemental assistance funds. One of them will be some funding that can be reimbursed, and the other one will be for schools which did not receive distribution under ARP EANS. And so we have a lot of different things going on here, and we have a lot of moving places to hit. For the Year 2 supplemental assistance, for those of you who will qualify for the reimbursement part of this program, those reimbursements will only be for things that expenses you incurred during the 2021-22 school year. There's too many 20s in that statement. And that the backside cutoff on that funding will be the day you receive your awards. So theoretically, on April 18th, you will all have your application approved, and that will be the last day that an expense could be reimbursed for. Any expenses after that will have to go into the pot of services being provided. And so that's one of the complicated things. That's one of the, because this money goes back to EANS 1, we have that caveat in there. The third pot of money is the gap assistance money, $921,000 in that. And really this money is targeted at, there are about 4 schools, as nearly as we can tell, who did not receive, how do I say this, did not receive the first round of EANS because they took PPP. But if we're projecting for their EANS allocation between the two of them added together was more than what they received from PPP, will make up the gap. If your PPP was the larger of the 2 pots of money, then you're ahead in the game anyway. If your PPP was smaller than your EANS calculations, we're attempting to make up that gap. Both of those Year 2 funds are funds that came from the governor's office, and through GEAR funds, and some of it was funds we have turned back because they weren't claimed at the beginning. So it's just a little bit more information about the 3 funds, the 3 pots of money. Important to note the period of performance. Period of performance for the ARP EANS is from the law, and it says through September 30th of 2024. For the 2 GEAR funds, you'll notice that because they go back to the first round of EANS, they end in 2023, and because they're also run through the Department of Labor, they end 10 days earlier so the Department of Labor can do their stuff. Eligibility for all of them starts the same. Have to be nonprofit, have to be accredited, have to operate prior to March 13th, have to have not received PPP for the first 2 on or after December 27th of 2020. The first one is where the 22% the significant poverty and most impacted comes in. We'll get to that in just a minute. And then the Year 2 funds, if you didn't receive an ARP EANS allocation or you incurred in expenses, you'll receive an allocation there. And like I said, the gap assistance is targeted at really 4 schools. You gotta love the internet because we can look up and see what all of you got for PPP. Another important thing to note, in the application process, you will have the chance to update your free and reduced numbers.
I've got no
It's important that you notice that the data still has to be from the 1920 school year. That's the way the statute reads. We can't update to current year's data, but we can make that data be better. So if you're a school who did not submit free and reduced lunch in 1920 or for 1920, because you didn't want to mess with Title I back before we knew all of this stuff was going on, we will give you a chance at this point in the process to update those numbers. So if the number grows for you, it's important that you put that number in. If you were a 0, it's important that you put the real number in there, because it's really going to impact your your allocation and the amount of money that you get. Allowable uses are very similar to the programs that we've talked about before. No reimbursements are allowed except for in a few specific situations. And those things will become more clear to you when we get everything rolled out. So please be aware of that. And we are again using facts to do the application, to do the budgeting, to provide the services, and all of those things. And before we get to the point in this thing where you guys ask questions and you say, why haven't we gotten our money? I'm going to tell you without a doubt that most of the holdup in you guys receiving your money and your vendors receiving their payments is the Department of Education. We have been audited, and so that has increased the work that we have to do with the applications and the reimbursements to facts as they come in, and so that has slowed us down. I don't know that we were doing great beforehand, but that has slowed us down considerably. So just be aware of that, and that will continue to be a thing probably as we work through EANS 2 until we get all of that stuff worked out on our end. Okay, so this is a timeline, and it's a little bit different than what came out to you in the email. We did some adjustments because of the Easter holiday, knowing that some of you weren't going to be around on the days we were planning to do some work. So the application deadline is going to be April 12th, and we will take about a week to try to get everything put together. You will all get your applications on April 20th, and that will also be the cutoff date for reimbursements. Anything for those of you who qualify for that portion of the program, anything you buy after that won't be reimbursable. June 1 is when we really want your initial workbook submissions to be completed. And there are really two reasons for that. One of them is some of you are going to want summer activities, and to get those things in place, even if they're late summer, we're going to need that stuff to be in place. And the second thing is, if you want staffing for the fall, once again, that process takes time, and so we need to know about those things beforehand. There'll be a amendment window in August and September, and then of course at the end there we have the dates in 2023 and 2024 when this ends. Hopefully we're all still here at that point in time. Okay, we're going to move on to just a little bit of the stuff about ARP EANS. It's the biggest pot of money. Part of our holdup with getting the U.S. Department of Ed to approve our application was our attempt to expand the number of eligible schools beyond the 21 schools that have over 40% poverty. And to do that, we used the public school that you are affiliated with. We used their poverty rate, and did a proportionality thing, and that created a lot more schools that were eligible. And so, and there are some other factors that we looked at, but this was how we came down to making as many schools eligible as we could. And so when we get to, and when you see your allocations finally towards the end, these two charts are, don't use them for any more than the paper that they're written on, but they give you some idea of the methodology that we're going to use as we finalize the allocations. U.S. Department of Ed was pretty clear to us that they wanted a tiered approach to the allocations, not a flat approach. And we've also gotten in, we're no longer able to do a flat a rate per pupil, a base rate, and then a rate on top of that for the poverty kids. We're supposed to be targeting the high poverty schools, high poverty students. And so I don't know exactly what the final thing will look like, but it looks like this. And the goal is kind of to keep the percentages of money even with the percentages of schools who are being served, the percentages of students who are being served. And so the allocation will be loosely based on something that looks like this when we get to that point. And once again, there are 208 schools who may qualify for this. There are more non-publics in Nebraska than that, but some of them have merged, some of them have closed, some of them weren't in operation before March 13th of 2020. And some of them, for various reasons, aren't able to participate. So we're at 208 who may be able to participate in this one. The application process, and I think maybe we will go to the application right now, Sarah, if I'll undo sharing and you can start sharing. But just know that your school will receive a allocation for, or excuse me, will receive a link with the application from Facts, and the application, all of that stuff will be the same for all three grants, and it will pretty much be the same as what you had before. Sarah, are you able to share?
Okay, let me get unmuted here and I will share the screen. Hopefully this will load for everyone. Can you see it, Jim?
Yep, I can see it. Okay.
All right,
So,
great.
go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, so this is what the email will look like. It will have quite a bit of information in here, but most of it's repetitive of what you have already seen. The biggest thing to highlight from this message is that it is going to be coming from FactEd at factsmgt.com, and there will be a link to click on in the email. And kind of the other thing to highlight too about this is the test application. So no actual data will really truly be populated in this demonstration. And you might see a few changes from today to when this is actually pushed out to the schools. So we're still just finalizing a few things and making a couple improvements. And Jim, I don't know if you wanted to say anything specific about either the email message or this first page.
No, I don't. You're doing good. I'll jump in exactly when I need to.
All right, sounds good. So you'll be able to scroll down, click on begin application, and it's going to drop you right into the application. Again, a lot of data you will see will be pre-populated based on what was uploaded into the system. Next here. The way that the system is set up is the first thing it will do is push in the city that your school is located in. And then you do have to just verify or select the school from the list. So here you can see I was already kind of going through this, looking at the application earlier. I'm just using St. Joseph. Mailing address, this is just dummy information that I populated for demo purposes. And then you'll go down to the acknowledgement. So this is really just asking if you want to accept or decline participation in the 2020 EANS program that your school will qualify for. So if you click accept, you'll see additional fields. If you click decline, then it's going to hide all of those additional fields.
And it's really important that everyone fill this out, even if you know you're not going to qualify, if you just don't want the funds. We're not really allowed to say, oh, the deadline passed and Boys Town didn't fill theirs out, so they must not make the money, or they must not want the money. All that happens if you don't do that is I start hunting you down, and I stalk you until you finally go in there and click I decline and move on. So please take that time to go in and fill those out so I don't have to chase you down.
Great point. So then you are going to be certifying information that it is true and correct. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but I don't think that you will be too surprised by the statements when you get in there. You do have to check the box to acknowledge and certify before you would be able to move on. And then I was in here earlier, nothing will come pre-checked, but again, just confirming the following statements are true and correct regarding the school that's requesting services or assistance.
You will notice that this application is quite a little more, there's quite a more to it than the first application, and that's, you give the government time to make a program run long enough and they add rules. And so this is what you get to go through.
And these will all be unchecked. The nice thing is if you happen to start the application, leave and come back, it will remember anything that you enter in. So you can kind of see, I was in here earlier testing. But again, just reading each statement, checking the box for the program assurances. And then here as part D, this is regarding the PPP. So this is that small business paycheck protection program. And there's two parts here. So this is asking before December 27th, 2020, you can indicate yes or no. If you indicate yes, you are going to have to put in the dollar amount for the loan. And just kind of noted here that it does not need to include currency symbols. So it would just really be, you know, a basic number that's entered. Yes, no. And then here you can see, you know, a question regarding if the school will apply for after December 27th, 2020. So those two amounts are separated. And you would be able to indicate yes for both, you know, yes for one, no for the other to match your school situation. And again, if you indicate that the school did apply and receive for after December 27th, 2020, you would be putting in another number, excluding those currency symbols for this as well. Jim, am I going too fast or anything
Nope.
you wanted to add on
Nope.
this piece?
No, you're doing well. And then like the PPP will affect your eligibility. And if you say that you took money and we will verify that number in some way, shape or form in the time between the time your application is received and the time it's approved. And Jen does keep a database of that information.
And just some kind of extra information down here at the bottom. Hit next. And then this is the school data that Jim was kind of referring to. So this information will be pre-filled. And again, it is based on 2019-20 school year data. This is just for demo purposes. We have some numbers out here. If you need to update the free or reduced counts, you would not be updating it in this top field. We're going to ask that you go down and then indicate where the new number is coming from. You know, maybe it is with the E-rate program, maybe it's scholarship financial assistance count. You can indicate either by checking the box. You will then be able to provide the new number that should be used, and then upload supporting documentation or the report to kind of back up and verify that number. Nice.
And this is the point where, I mean, we have the chance to update data, and remember it does have to be from the 1920 school year.
I think, and there there will be, and I think the way that we originally had this was there was a third option. So this is looking at it as required. We need to just I'll get this updated so it's not required there. But for the purposes of demo, I'll put that in there. So here, this is kind of explaining like the most impacted, you know, the numbers that are being looked at, and then you will have the ability to describe the academic impact as well. So this is a required question, so you will need to populate some sort of, you know, explanation in this. All right. And then finally, part F. So this is just explaining what can be used or what EANS funding can be used. So the categories are pretty consistent with what you've seen before. And we're asking again for a description about what the allowable services or assistance you are requesting.
And once again, all that in the previous slide are just information that we need to get from you guys, and so we're trying to collect as much of that up front as we can.
Authorized representative. So this is where you're going to type your name, just signing off, enter in your title or position, and then you're doing a digital signature. Other, and the final page, this will just be a review. So it's going to let you know, everything that you agreed to, everything that was input on the application, and you'll have to scroll down and hit finish to submit. Now, if at this point you see that something was incorrect, you can always go back previous and return to that page to make any updates or changes. All right, and then it's just the confirmation page here.
And we have tried to pre-fill as much information as we can, and tried to make that part of it as simple as we can. For those of you who have more than one school, North Platte Catholic schools you'll have to fill out 2 applications. You'll have to fill out one for McDade Elementary and one for St. Pat's High School. And so all of you who have 2 schools will be in that same situation. If you have 3 schools, you have to fill it out 3 times. Remember, this email will go to the contact that you guys provided to me for each school. And so that will be the person who sees that. And those people have been included, I think, in almost all of the mailings that we've sent out so far. So just be aware, I guess, of those 2 things. Is there anything else?
I think that's everything that I had.
Does anybody, while we're on the application form itself, does anybody have any questions about the application form? Maybe I need to clarify that.
Yeah, and it does give you a confirmation email too, so that's just a good check to make sure that it's submitted successfully. So.
Yep.
So this is Josh. I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
As it applies to the PPP money, do you know, like for a lot of these non-public schools, I assume they're associated with churches, is the PPP money that a church receive separate than what the school would have received, or is that typically included as one entity, or is it based on tax IDs, or how do I differentiate that, I guess?
The rule of thumb on that is, does it impact your budget?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, because I guess I know our church received PPP money,
right.
but I'm not sure. Okay.
The rule we used the first round, and I think we'll use it again this round, is if it has an impact on your budget as the school, then it's your money, and if it didn't have an impact on your school budget, then it's not. Just because the school received the funds does not automatically exclude you.
Okay, thanks.
There will only be, and then just I catch this message in the chat. We can only have one contact per school for the email stuff. You know, there will only be one person who gets it, so I can't add anybody to that list. There won't be two people from the same list. And if you need to be added to my general contact list, please send me an email outside of this, because I don't know if I'll be able to get back to the chat.
So I'm sorry, one more question. So this is the item that needs to be filled out here within the next 2 or 3 weeks, right?
This is, yes, what Sarah just went through with you is what is due on, I look, April 12th, I believe was the date that's due.
All right, thanks.
And it's really basic. I mean, other than figuring out whether you took PP or not, I think most of it is you're either going to, you know, follow the rules and participate or not, other than making that determination on PPP. We tried to make that part of it as easy for you as we could. Okay, we'll go back to just a little bit of this part of the presentation. There is some information, and I don't know that the website is complete at this point in time. I know Jen is working on that as we speak. But the documentation will be there, and we will get everybody taken care of. So I do want you all to know that this is Jen's PowerPoint, and she told me yesterday that here's the PowerPoint, have a good time with this. So if there's something that I stumble over just a little bit, it's not my PowerPoint. If those of you who ever watched the movie Necessary Roughness, I feel a little bit like Wally when the coach gave him the whistle. I'm really not sure what I'm going to do with it. So anyway, these are the allowable uses. As we said before, they are not different than what was in EANS 1. One of the different rulings that came out from the U.S. Department of Ed is that if you're doing, and for those of you who wanted to do HVAC the first time and use a crane to move it from one place to the other, so you could say it was portable, you can use ARP EANS money for the labor to install that HVAC, but you just can't use it to buy the equipment. And so that is not different than EANS 1, but it's something that they've clarified since EANS 1 came out. And I mean, all the rules are the same. Doesn't make you a recipient of federal assistance, so you don't have to go through any of those things. Everything has to be reasonable and necessary. You have to support it with invoices. You have to actually have received it. For those of you who are going to get money from this, even if you took the before December 20th of 2020 PPP money, you can't pay for the same thing with both sets of funds. That all has to be separate. Otherwise, we get in supplement, not supplant issues. We don't want anybody to have to pay back their money. Oops. These are things that are not reimbursable. They are the same as the first go around of things that are not allowed to be reimbursed for. I've gotten the question, comes up off of the first one about improvements for ventilation systems, and including windows. And so I've done a little asking of questions, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it. And there is a rule in the federal regulations that talks about the ratio of cost between what the replacement is and what the value of putting in a new window is. And so if you're going to call it a replacement or a repair, and it's more than half the value of putting in new windows, then it's no longer a replacement or a repair, it's new windows. And so that's the cutoff. If you can repair them for less than 50% of new, go ahead and do that. If you're going to repair them for more than 50% of new, then that's considered new and won't be reimbursable. So just so we have that question answered out front, I guess. And so this part about installation. You know, and any equipment has to be able to be removed without remodeling. There are specific things that are not allowed with any of them. And if it runs in my mind correctly, water bottle fillers was one of the things that was specifically not allowed, because my assumption is that you would have to do some remodeling to take that out. So when you're looking at equipment kinds of things, you can kind of use that as the guideline to, would it be similar to a water bottle filler? Okay, and we'll go, whoops, how many pages did I jump? Okay. This always gets a little bit muddy, so just so that we're all clear on this, this is us saying that we have told you that the Department of Ed will retain title to all property, equipment, and supplies that you purchase with these funds, and that is what is required in the law. And so we have differences between property, equipment, tangible supplies. Most everything gets an inventory tag. It's listed on inventory someplace. If someone comes in and wants to look at your inventory, that should be readily available. I am assuming Fax who keeps those inventories because they buy all the equipment, and things should be tagged that they are the property of the Department of Education. Software licenses are a little tough to tag, but they are inventoriable. So we keep track of those things that way. Things that are not consumed during the period of performance must be removed. You know, we don't want to come get your laptops or your smart boards or any of those things out of your building. We can also transfer them to another federal program. And then what I say, that some of the things change on the inventory and the tagging, but you can continue to use them. And places you can transfer them to are ESEA, which is your title programs, or IDEA, which are your SPED programs. Okay, and so these are the resources or places to go for the resources. I guess that kind of concludes the bulk of my portion of what we're going to talk about today. Does anybody have any other questions?
There were a couple of questions in the chat. Jim, I think someone was also to ask a question, but is this slideshow also going to be published on the website?
Yes.
So
This is being recorded, and the recording will be on the website, and so will the slide deck separately, so you don't have to listen to me twice.
And then the other question was around the supporting documentation for the financial aid applications for the free and reduced qualifications. It says, are we sharing a summary report of who we understand meet the qualifications, or will we have to share confidential family application materials?
You will be sharing the summary report, and you may be requested to provide more information about those people, but you won't be able to be asked to be providing the personally identifiable information. We cannot ask for that.
Okay. And then the next question is, can you talk more about the poverty requirement?
The poverty requirement is, no matter which method you use or report you use or documentation you use, it still goes back to 185% of the 2020 free and reduced income amount. This is the same thing you would use if you were submitting numbers for Title I. And I don't have that chart with me, but we'll try to make a note and make sure we get that put up on the website.
And those were the only questions in the chat, unless there was someone, I think, that was going to unmute and ask a question if they wanted to do that now.
I have a question on the proportionality, which is that, you know, at St. Vincent de Paul, our free and reduced numbers are really low.
Yep.
But we are in the OPS district. I
So your
assume
free and reduced percentage is 74.
74%. All
Yep.
right. Thanks. That good news for St. Vincent de Paul.
Well, here is the thing for you though, that number helps make more schools eligible, but it's not
Right.
necessarily going to increase your allocation.
Okay.
If you're average, if you were 10% poverty, you weren't going to meet the threshold. But now by being in OPS, you're 74%. So now you meet the threshold and you're going to get funds.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I piggyback on that though?
Yep.
So if I'm a school that is part of OPS, but much like the other schools on here, I have a low poverty number.
Mhm.
Am I actually reporting my actual data from 1920 from financial aid applications and such? Because I didn't apply for free and reduced programs. So
Yes.
you're not going to have data, but how do you reconcile that with the fact that we're part of OPS? You're saying we get to participate being part of OPS, but the allocation will still be based on our percentages of free and reduced?
How do I word this? Maybe. It depends. I'm going to tap dance around that as much as I can because we haven't figured out exactly what it's going to look like yet. But I do know that if you don't report any free and reduced lunch kids when you get the chance to update your data, if you were at 0 before, you're probably not going to generate any funds, no matter whether you're in OPS or not. You'll be eligible, but you won't have the kids to generate the money. Does that make sense?
Yes, I believe so, but I also am understanding or wanting to confirm that you're wanting actual numbers based on as best
Yes.
as we can financial
Yes.
data
Yes.
for the school levels that we request. Okay.
Okay, if there aren't any more questions, then I'm going to turn.
I got one more.
Okay, go for
Sorry,
it.
this is Josh again.
You're okay,
Just real
Josh.
quick. So now I know there's 3 different programs here, right? But so, and it seems to all go back to that, was it 2020, 2021 school year? So is this money to support expenses that have already been incurred, or is there opportunity to get funds based on planned expenditures to continue to address COVID and remote learning and stuff, or, you know, even learning loss, things like that?
Josh, any funds that are part of ARP EANS of that pot of money are not available for any kind of reimbursement. Those are only
Okay.
for the kinds of programs that you're talking about moving forward.
Going forward. Got it.
Yeah. In the gear 2, there will be a small portion of those funds that will be available for reimbursement for stuff that happened in 21, 22, but the rest of that will be for the same kinds of expenses as ARP EANS moving forward expenses. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Jim, there's a handful, this is Elizabeth. There's a handful of questions regarding the timing of receiving allocations, and then also as it relates to head count. Allocations will be received as soon as everyone applies. We'll have the information to be able to do the allocations at the state level. So you will have the allocations in April, mid-April, and then to address how that transitions to your headcount questions. Having the April numbers now, any of those dollars can be spent on a go-forward basis to help with your learning loss, to help with any of your COVID impacted student learning in the classroom. So, you know, relating to the one that I identified a question regarding classroom reduction. It does still have to tie to COVID learning loss. So it can't just be for the simple purpose of reducing classroom size. You do have to have a plan in place that relates to pandemic learning loss. And I'm looking through these questions again. So a handful of questions relating to enrollment versus 2019, 2020. Jim, the specific question is, what if our enrollment is now more than double of the 2019, 2020 school year?
The law doesn't give us any discretion on what data year we use. And so that we're stuck at 1920 on the data.
Yes, and that is definitely across the nation. And then there is a question in here regarding labor for installation of new windows. So labor for installation is one of those things that was clarified as allowable. The windows are not. They continue to not be allowed.
That is correct.
Again, this PowerPoint will be posted. We will also post to the best of our ability the list, the kind of Q&A for the questions. I've been trying to copy those over into a Word doc, Jim, so that we can have record of all these questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm. And if there are no further questions, I think we do have about 10 minutes left, and we'll go into a little bit of a go forward conversation. I like the questions that are being asked because they really relate to how are we going to use our funds or our best use of those funds. Again, I'll reintroduce myself, Elizabeth Shelton. I am on the contract end of our account with Fax Education Solutions. Before I go too much further, I do want to thank Jim and those at the state. The level of support for non-public schools in Nebraska is just unprecedented compared to the rest of the nation. Nebraska has done an exceptional job of ensuring that all of our non-public schools are addressed and accounted for, and with the 3 different funding sources available, just making sure that everyone is really aware of the lengths that the state has gone through to make sure that the non-public schools and students are supported. So I do appreciate that, Jim. I am going to introduce you to Jeremy Beck on the Fax Ed team. Jeremy will be your primary contact, as well as a handful on Sarah's team to assist you with your budgeting, your workbook budgets. And I do believe Jeremy has just a couple quick slides. Jim, if you wouldn't mind allowing Jeremy to share his slide deck. Yep, and then we're going to give you a little bit of a preview as to what's to come over the course of the next couple of weeks, because great questions being asked and answered throughout this call, but there's going to be a lot more questions as you look at the information and then get your budgets and try to figure out what it is that you want to do with the funding. And Jeremy's going to try to help you with that. And we're going to try to set up some of these Zoom meetings in the future in conjunction with the state to assist you in making some of those decisions. So Jeremy, I believe the last 9 minutes now, as I spoke for 60 seconds, is all yours.
And Jeremy, do you want me to go for 2 minutes and then give you the last 7? All right, that sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, so I'll make this quick. I'm Sarah Noble, fiscal agent, financial operations manager. Great to see so many familiar names and faces. I know my team is excited to be here and see everyone as well. So welcome. We are the team that really works with you once your application's approved, you're working on your workbook budget, and then we are moving forward with the dynamic forms requests, the spend down reports, amendments, things like that. So overall, the process by far is going to be very similar to what you're familiar with. We're still going to have the workbook that you've seen before. We're using dynamic forms, the spend down reports, amendment requests. Those processes will be very, very much the same. We do have some things in the queue as far as improvements to the process and additional documentation and supporting information to kind of help you along the road. So you'll see some information released over the next couple of weeks. And then in the April webinar, we'll also highlight some of those things as well. At this time, I'll ask that my team that is on the call just unmute themselves and say hello. I know you've been practicing your unison hello together, but at least then your videos will pop up so everyone can see you.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. It's nice to see everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Yep. So yeah, that's us. Again, we're excited to be here, excited to partner with you all and help you through this process. And we look forward to round 2. Jeremy, with that, I'll pass it back to you. I think I did good. I got it in 2 minutes.
All right. So you guys might be wondering where Scott Svatos went. Well, the good news is he didn't go far. He actually moved from the fiscal management team that you were just introduced to that works under Sarah and actually joined me, because one slight change that we're making for this year is on an ongoing basis moving forward. Scott and I are your exclusive EANS contacts. If you're a school that is currently in conversation with one of the other RVPs that you've been working with since last year, those conversations will continue until it's a good time to transition over to Scott and I. Scott's primary role is going to be renewing any of the positions that are in place. I believe we have 58 positions right now across the state of Nebraska that were put into place with all the RVPs. He is going to be responsible for that and adding additional positions to those existing schools that are already using staffing services under FACSED. He'll also be guiding any questions that he gets for additional services to me or to the folks that can best answer those questions. And so what you could expect with that is obviously fewer RVPs means that exclusivity where you're actually going to be able to come to Scott or I for everything service related. Sarah's team for everything fiscally management related. So all the process and information that comes out. If you have questions about bills that have been paid, et cetera, that'll still be Sarah's team. But Scott and I will be able to give you consistency in how we talk about staffing, what kind of program elements that come with staffing or come with professional development and other service ideas that are going to come out of your conversations as you roll out and start to plan on what your use of funds are going to be. But what we also offer is that strategic mindset. What are other schools doing? I work across 13 states, and I've seen a lot of different variations of the use of funds, all the way from things that have been purchased, all the way down through a lot of support services that have really moved the needle academically. That being coaching, professional development, providing your teachers with stipends for the professional development and curriculum realignment that they've been working on up to this point or will be in the future. So there's lots of different ways to utilize your funds as we move forward that have further become clarified over the last year or so. And above all else, we have access to expertise. Anything that we can't answer, we have a whole cadre of experts in the field of education that come to us, that are available to us at any moment to jump on calls with schools to say, how do I align my Title I services with my EANS services and bolster my my interventionists and the resource room that I have already in existence that I'm paying for? How do I supplement that on top of putting interventionists in paid under EANS for the next couple of years under EANS 2 or remnant funds under EANS 1? So duplicating, what you currently have plus adding services, that'll all be stuff that Scott and I will cover. Last but not least, the week of April 18th, we're going to co-host with Jim and his crew some conversations about strategic planning for uses of funds. Again, moving the needle on what you're trying to do academically within schools, providing some insight, but more than anything, this is just about helping you best utilize those dollars in a go-forward basis. So the way that Jim speaks to this is how do we really long-term allow schools to start programs, maintain programs, and to cooperatively use the funds that are available to them under EANS now, but possibly Title in the future, or other ways to really engage the services of FACS or whoever you choose as a school on the best way to move things forward. So this is just a sample of some of the services that we'll be talking about, things that of course we have available, but you can get from anybody. We're not the exclusive provider. So, a curriculum adoption, a big thing with curriculum adoption and rewriting the curriculum is allowing your teachers to be paid for their time outside of contract hours. So a lot of what you've been doing with your teachers to this point, or teachers have been having to do just to rewrite curriculum or modify curriculum to fit with the pandemic needs, is to actually, those hours they're already working, get them stipends to help feel a little bit more like they're being compensated for all those additional hours. Those are things that Scott and I can help with as well. Professional development, instructional coaching, leadership coaching. These might be opportunities for schools to do something they've never been able to do because the funds just weren't available, but get real high intense one-on-one coaching with their either struggling teachers or teachers that are going through a particular implementation of a new curriculum or a new software. We have experts in all those fields, and that is allowable under the use of funds. But also staffing, of course, when you start talking about services, all of these different specialists that are across the state of Nebraska now are available to you, including counselors and tutors, and of course, the stipends for teachers doing what they're already doing, or potentially teaching summer school. Any of those things to get those teachers a few extra shillings to do more of the great work that they're already doing outside of their contract year or out of their contract day. So that's just a real snippet on what's to come. Once you guys have your allocations following the closing of the contract and the allocations becoming available in mid-April, then we'll start planning for some of these sessions to go with you as far as, what can you do to design services moving forward? What are options? What are things that can be done? In lieu of waiting for that, if you have a desire to start having those conversations now, especially around your remnant funds for EANS 1, hopefully you're checking those spend down reports that are coming from FactSed. If you have funds that you need to move around, obviously that's Sarah's team that can walk you through that process. But then what can those funds be used for as far as I want to supplement some of my services? I want to put professional development together, whatever those are, we're available to you, Scott and I both, at any point. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to all of you for questions. The same email remains in effect, eansfunds@faxmanagement.com. If you have specific questions to ask us about your EANS 1 or potentially EANS 2 rollout, that is the same email address that you can continue to use. So you're welcome to do that. Or you can reach out to Scott and I. It's just first initial last name at faxmgt.com, same tagline. And if all else fails, reach out to anybody on the fax team, and they will direct you towards Scott and I to assist with conversations moving forward. So thanks for letting me just talk a little bit to you about what's to come, and we're here for at any point to offer assistance to you. So feel free to look us up.
Thanks, Jeremy. And we do have one final question regarding the timing of using your funds for under EANS 2, under the ARP EANS, or those two other qualifications of funding. So you do need to get through the application process and then receive an approved workbook. So the state does need to still approve your plan for spend and your workbook. So as soon as those workbooks are approved, there is no, you do not have to wait until the next school year to start using your EANS 2 funds.
So yeah, theoretically, if you have your workbook in by June 1, then however long it takes for that to get approved, then after that point, you could start to spend the funds.
If you are the first in, you're probably going to be the first workbook to be approved.
If 47 of them come in on the first day, then it's the roll of the
maybe
dice
not.
to use first.
Yes, exactly.
So sorry, just to this is Josh again, make sure I understand the workbook. So the workbook then is like an Excel document of your spend plan with anticipated budget. Is that what we say the workbook?
Yes. Basically, it's just an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, thanks.
Josh, did you do EANS 1?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. All right. I was going to say it's exactly the same. It'll probably be exactly the same, but if you didn't do that, that's not helpful.
Yeah, we're trying to fill in here. So
Gotcha. I understand. Okay, guys, I thank you so much for your attention today. Thanks for your questions. We'll do our best to get information out to you as soon as we can. like this is another one of those things we're building right now, and so we will do the best that we can, and we're just trying to get services and money to as many schools as we can. And so if you have questions, the fax people are more than willing to answer them. I know Scott loves answering questions, so he'll be all over it for you. And I will answer them too. So please contact me if you have questions. And if you didn't get your question for sure answered today, let me know and I will try to get an answer for you. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Jeremy, for your help today as well. And through the whole process.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Looking
All
forward
right.
to continuing these conversations.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you.